I noticed that there was a space between the player movement script name. For consistency, it's best to remove the space. Create a new script called Player Collision, and attached it to the car. Now go into the script. Delete the two using tags, and both the start and update method. Start with void, as we do not need a return. On collision, enter. Make sure the spelling and the capital letters are exactly the same, or else it won't work. Add parentheses. What this means is, whatever code is placed inside the curly brackets will be executed when the object collides with something. As long as our object has a rigid body and a collider, this code should work. We can use debug.log and a message to test if it is working. So go ahead and type it in between the curly brackets. Type debug.log parentheses, and a message saying, we hit something. When we go back to Unity and hit play, it should say we hit something, because technically we are touching the ground. I think our road should be a little wider. And since we made it longer, we have not placed the car and camera at the start. Let's do that now. It's time to add some real obstacles to our scene. Drag some rocks onto the scene view, and rescale it to an appropriate size. In order for the rocks to collide, they must have a rigid body, and a collider. I can tell from the scene view, the box collider is a little too big for our model. So let's go ahead and adjust it. Now when we hit play, the console should say we hit something, for both the ground and rock, as well as each additional collision with it. However, we do not want to register the collision with the ground, so we need a way to keep track of what is being hit. Start by typing collision inside the parentheses. This lets Unity know we want to gather some information about the collision. And then we need to give that information a name. Let's call it collision info. Now instead of displaying, we hit something. Let's actually identify what we hit. Replace the text with collision info, and now we are looking for information on the collider we hit. For our purpose, we are looking for the name. So what this means is, by accessing the collision info, and the collider, we should be able to display the name of what we hit. Let's rename our boulder to an obstacle. Now when we hit play, it should display a collision with obstacle in the console. The ability to identify collision with different objects also allows us to trigger different events. Our goal is to have the movement shut off when the car collides with an obstacle. Type if collision info collider is equal to an obstacle, and whatever is in the curly bracket, execute it. We can use a debug.log statement to see if it's working. Type debug.log, parenthesis, and inside quotations, type, we hit an obstacle, and end it with a semicolon. When we hit play, the console should only show a collision with the obstacle, and not the ground. In order for our code to be less taxing on our system, it is more efficient to use tags. Tags are used to group objects together. Let's mark all our obstacles with a tag. Create a new tag, and name it obstacle. Now set the tag of our boulder to an obstacle. In the script, replace collider name with tag instead. When we hit play, the tag obstacle should register when we collide with it. Instead of just displaying a message, let's disable the player movement if a collision occurs. First we need to create a reference to your player movement script. Type public and the name of our script. Player movement. Next we need to give it a name. Let's call it movement. Back in Unity, we can see an empty slot in the player collision script. Drag the player movement script into that box. Now we have created a reference from the player collision script to the player movement script. And we have given it the name, movement. Now let's add a code to shut off the movement after a collision. Replace the debug.log statement with movement enabled equals false. Looks like I'm missing a curly bracket here. Let's add one and save it. When the car collides with the obstacle now, the movement script should shut off.